Hello, and welcome to our thought-provoking podcast with myself, actor, writer, director and deep thinker, Libby MacArthur, counsellor, life coach and all-round mountain man, Ross Hislop, and compassionate, strong advocate for women, motivational speaker and broadcaster, Anne Hughes. In this series of podcasts, we talk about the things that we hardly ever talk about. We attempt to unpack the obvious, important, enormous life topics, questions and controversial issues that no one hardly ever mentions or wants to discuss. Because it makes, well, at least some of us, feel a tad uncomfortable. Nothing here is overlooked. This is the elephant in the room. In today's podcast, myself and my fellow elephants try and bust a few myths about sugar. We all get sugar cravings. I know I certainly do. But the fact is that sugar is probably the most consumed addictive substance around the world. And it is wreaking havoc on our physical and mental health. And guess what? Nobody is sounding the alarm, which makes this a very big elephant in the room. Ross, Anne and I started talking about our respective relationship with sugar, and it took us all right back to childhood, to clearly where this addiction began. Sweets were a treat, sweets were a reward, and that's where the foundation of our nation's addiction to sugar began. As you're about to hear, my relationship with sugar started in 1960s Castle Milk, the peripheral housing scheme built by the Glasgow Corporation in the 50s. The ice cream van and its windows stacked full of colourful sweets is an indelible image imprinted on my brain. See, if I'm being really honest, I don't think I ever got my fill of the sweeties I fantasised about when I was wee. Have a listen. I suppose we can confess about how much of a sugar addict we are or not. And it all comes from upbringing, I suppose. When I was a kid, I would hang about with folk who would get you in, you know, when you were away and folk would say, going to get us in. I was never allowed to get him in. But I'd maybe be hanging about with, you know, Cathy Clay, and Cathy Clay would get into her house when the van was there, you know, and you'd be hearing, Greensley, da, 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 da. And she'd run in and say to her ma, money for the van. And Mummy would give her money. And I'd be like, what kind of house is this? And I'd run out after her. I mean, I was lucky if the penny tray was something that I could manage, but van sweeties, completely different from shop sweeties. And I remember thinking, God, you know, imagine being able to afford shop sweeties. I mean, Cathy Clay would give me something for the penny tray because her mummy gave her more money than she knew what to do with. But we never had sweeties in our house. Never, ever, 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 ever.
We did. You just gave me such a memory there of the van coming in, me very occasionally getting money for it. But I lived 12 up in High Flats. That used to be Ibrox until only when I was really wee. Mama used to throw the money out the window. And if you weren't getting the money, you would maybe get a wee piece of chopped pork and a wee piece of jam out the 12-storey window. That's when you had 12 stories up, and it would come flying down, and you'd be trying to work out why the wind was taking it.
Do you remember Wayne's used to come out the house with a piece of margarine with sugar on the covered in meat? I mean, I didn't even get that. I
wasn't allowed stuff like that. No. I think we had biscuits certainly, and when it was somebody's birthday and they got their birthday money, they had to buy everybody else crisps and sweeties that night. That was a rule in our family. Right. So you would get sweeties occasionally, but not like I would say my kids' experience of the world where open the fridge and there'll be stuff there. And saying that, I've never been a fan of sugary sweeties. Chocolate, yeah, but like I don't let my Waynes have like, I never have had like you know, boiled sweeties or jelly sweeties, stuff that's just full of E numbers.
The stuff that's all at the till. At the till as the Waynes are looking at the jelly pigs and the...
It drives Waynes after nut. I noticed that when my kids were wee, it drives them after nut.
You can see it, can't you, instantly? Instantly the change in children. You know, those Skittles, those wee colourful balls of sugar. You can just watch it, you give them to a child and instantly they just, you can watch them morph into something totally different.
It's kind of sad, isn't it? Because then you start getting all that stuff about, you know, stop being bad, you're being bad.
But you gave them the sugar for a treat in the first place.
Totally. And of course, that's the whole thing about sugar, isn't it? It's like, if you're good, you get sugar, and then it makes you bad.
It's like, if you're a good wee boy and you just sit there quietly and don't move, mummy will bring you a sweetie back from the shop. You sit there and no say a word.
There used to be a thing, didn't there, about putting sugar on a Wayne's gums?
Yep.
if they were teething. I mean, oh my actual God.
Well, I remember you used to get a jag at school, and you'd get your
sweet
jag, and the first thing you'd get afterwards is a square of sugar lump.
That's right.
I'm sure it's an apocryphal story, but a pal of mine told me that they saw a mother leaning down into a pram once with a big, huge lump of sugar in the shape of some wee animal or something, candy or something, and leaned into the pram and went, "Seggies." Maybe that kind of the pram, the baby wasn't even one, and you're like, here you go, Seggies.
Good.
Or iron brew in the baby's bottle.
So sugar is an elephant. Sugar is being something that
it's masquerading.
You used the word addiction, sugar addiction, and because it's legal and it's for sale, as you said quite rightly, isn't it? The product place very, very well those jelly sweeties right at the counter at the petrol stations or at the shops, didn't they?
But they're screaming out sugar. But actually, there's tons of research done on the sweet spot for tomato soup, or it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Sugar's in absolutely everything. But how can we be addicted to it? It's legal. I mean, these people that are supposed to look after us give us it. It can't be bad for us.
Yeah.
Well,
apparently, when I was reading about this, sugar was actually introduced in the West as a spice, not a sweetener.
Wow. Well, do you know, it's funny. It's all
sugar was a spice, not
it came
a sweetener.
via the Silk Route. That's how sugar got
it's
here.
The Silk Route, yeah.
Right. And so it was actually about spicing your food, or
So it all went horribly, horribly wrong. It was a condiment.
Aye.
Started off as a condiment.
Then it ended up
But
in everything.
seasoning your food, it was for part of that seasoning with cinnamon and things like that, and that's how it got here, and that's what they thought they were replacing.
And it is interesting. It's like, actually, if you think about sugar and a kind of everything in moderation, including moderation, is it okay? Like, I know you can go into a big shop and go, oh, there's demerara and there's cane sugar and there's it's got all these different names. If you look at labels, you're reading sucrose and corn syrup and I mean, it's got loads of different names, isn't it? Hiding out.
Like, our attitude to sugar surely changed because of the tax. Like, if I go and I buy a full flavour Coke, it's going to be dearer now. I don't drink. I will put up there, I don't drink fizzy juice at all anymore. But I think the sugar tax has changed it, hasn't it? Because it's not dearer. But then I suppose, is that bringing up the whole thing about the stuff that's got the fake sugar in it?
There's
like diet juice?
These
are, I mean, that
is very addictive.
Hugely addictive.
Yes.
I know tons of folk that say, 2 litre bottles of Pepsi and they want more.
Before I was unwell, I was completely addicted to Diet Iron Brew. Like, if I didn't have it by 10:30, 11 o'clock, I could not function in my work. Yeah. Right? And then after I was unwell, I didn't like the taste of it anymore. And now if I taste it, I'm like, that's disgusting. Why did I ever like that? Whereas I thought it was the nectar of the gods.
Sure. Well, and I suppose, I always think about the word treat, how we treat ourselves, and of course, since we were wee, it was always the treat. It was the thing, if you were good, you got a biscuit. If you were good, again, we didn't have biscuits. Remember my brother said to my mum, my pals get chocolate biscuits. How come we've got rich tea biscuits? And he said, she said, they last longer. Of course they did. He said, why don't you get camel shit biscuits? They'll last even longer.
I don't know. Is there something interesting in this sort of a splitting out? Sugar, I don't know, because there's we've talked about full sugar juice and aspartame, so diet juice. And then there's the naturally occurring sugars. Like, if you have a beautiful fruit salad, you can feel very, very sweetened up.
Yes,
of course,
yes.
yeah.
Because and that is sugar.
Yep.
It just doesn't feel like the damage in sugar.
Yes.
And then I think there's all these sugars that are hidden, like, again, I don't really have microwave meals very often. But even if you've bought a microwave curry and you were to look how much sugar's in it.
Unbelievable.
Huge amounts.
Do you know where the sugar is?
It's where the seasoning comes in.
Do you know where I'm always really shocked how much sugar? Bottles of water that say they're flavoured with fruit juice.
Yes.
Unbelievable amounts of sugar in these bottles of water.
Exactly.
With a
And it's
strawberry
in the small
flavour.
print on the rear of the bottle.
Yes.
That nobody looks at, and you would need a set of magnifying bifocal glasses to be able to read it anyway, but they've printed it there somewhere for some reason. But Shy Wains don't get any sweeties either. Everything revolves. Shy Wains, hey, away you go, get up there and ask. Shy Wains don't get any sweeties.
God. Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's been conditioned into us, hasn't it?
Aye.
So we're beginning to lean into the conversation about the fact that it's not innocent. We're looking at, for all the connotations are about, sweetened up and and sweetmeats, and of course it's all about celebration, it's all about party. You think of a Wayne's party and you think, just, oh my God, how much sugar are they going to have? Or if you're trying to soak in me a Wayne, I'll buy you a wee sweetie. I remember saying to my son when he was about 7, I'm going to the corner shop, do you want a wee bar of chocolate? And he said, no thanks, Mum. I was like, God bless. He said no thanks to a sweetie.
God bless my mammy, who passed away when I was 13, but she used to, quite often, she was a feeder, and I think that was just, she never got, she had a very deprived upbringing, and I was the youngest by far out our 4 siblings, and whenever we went out and she would give me treats or she would take me somewhere, don't you be telling your sisters.
Oh gosh.
So it was so food became a bit almost a secret, a cheeky secret. Yeah. And I think still I've got that hark back to things like that as being time with my mammy. So it's a happy memory. So for me, even my husband was out the other day with my wee 7-year-old boy, and they went past a baker's and he was saying, let's get Mum a cake, she'll like that. And he was right, because I did. But it's almost like I've programmed everybody in my life to buy me cake. So
it became this exotic thing. Sweets when we were wee, I suppose. I mean, Ross, you were probably the same with that idea of, it wasn't something that you could get, I remember people had a play piece that was sweeties. I was lucky if I had a bit of burnt toast as a play piece at school.
My best pal, who's still my pal, at school, used to come to school with a wee mini box after 8, sometime with 5 after 8's in it. I thought she was the most decadent person in the world. Can you imagine? After 8's for your play piece. Can you imagine?
I think it must have set up something for my compulsion for hiking, because the sweetie jar was always hid in the highest cupboard in the furthest away corner in our kitchen. Right. And I used to have to put a stool on top of a stool to get up onto the bunker and then crawl along the bunker like it was a trapeze and then swing off one door to get up into the corner and balance on my nose, to get the sweetie jar. Do you know, it's like the things we would go to get the sugar as a way,
Absolutely. It was all about getting money for me, it was all about getting money to buy sweeties. You'd go to the golf course and trail the long grass so you could sell the golf balls back to the golfers for fines, to go to the Drake Cafe to get sweets.
Used to spend my Saturdays collecting ginger bottles when you used to get 2 pence back for them. Used to go down with crates of them just so you could get one wee caramel or something like that at the shop.
And do you remember when you had we used to do races at the back, and if the wifeys sat in the kitchen chairs at the back, for a shilling you could get 24 sweeties. You used to be able to get blackjacks and fruit salads, and you'd get, they were a farthing, you get 4 for a penny. So that was like whoever won the race could get a blackjack or a fruit salad. So there was a big bowl of pure sugar ready to be handed out to the Waynes.
So see if we start to think about that sort of a really horrible side of sugar, because, and I've got a great, I suppose, to take us in that direction, I've got a great story. In 2012, I went to an event that was being run by a local charity called Rainbow Valley that tries to educate people on their wellness during their cancer journey and how they can take control of their own well-being, right? And this woman, Jessica Richards, spoke at it. And she had a breast tumour in her breast cancer, and she cut sugar. The story that she told that day, and she has wrote a book called Tropic of Cancer, which I've not read, but the story she told that day was when she cut sugar out of her diet completely. So she wasn't eating it in like the hidden in the microwave meals and all that. She just was not having sugar. The formation of her cancer tumour completely changed.
Yes. I read studies on that also.
And so sugar can have a very sinister side to it, can't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And this is why it's an elephant, because refined sugars, was all white.
Yep.
It was, if you think about the industrialisation of Britain, and then what came in was all these white tablecloths and white bread and white sugar, and and it was all to do with this kind of like delicate thing and refinement and stuff. And you think about refined sugar, what you're actually talking about is white powder that can go into your bloodstream as quickly as heroin, as quickly as, and basically the insulin spike is so great, you really are talking about your whole physiology, what would you call it, Ross? The body chemistry.
The biochemical response and reaction that it has to as it enters.
Totally,
I think it enters through the mesolimbic system, which is the highway into dopamine reward system.
Absolutely. It's a disempowering thing. And yet it's this carrot in front of the donkey, we know the donkeys that are kind of going, this is how we celebrate a cake for the birthday, a cake for the wedding, a cake for the cake. And none of it's real food.
Of course it's not. And as we're talking, it's added into everything, and yet you've got an issue of inflammation or indeed a sugar-induced illness, which I'm not a doctor, not a medical student, I'm nothing like that, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that if you're putting 20, 30 grams, 60 grams, 100 grams of sugar into your body every day, that's going to have a detrimental effect on the organism. You end up with diabetes, you end up with heart disease, you end up with something, you go to a doctor, you get medication to treat the symptom, which is the diabetes. Doctor doesn't sit down and say how many grams of sugar you eat in a day, mister.
No.
You know, what's your lifestyle? What's your diet like? Do you have 3 square meals a day? How do you eat? What's your lifestyle like? Do you exercise? Not got time to do that.
And yet that story is so dramatic, Anne, you know, that we're literally talking about a cancer patient.
Of course you get the beats in and they're giving them ice cream and cake after their treatment.
Yeah.
You get the beats in the day and there'll be somebody sitting having a wee square bit of jammy cake with some custard for their lunch.
And even more malevolent in as much as lots of carbohydrates are stored, then they turn into sugars. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, so even a package that might say no added sugar, you don't need to add the sugar. There's already hundreds of sugar in there. So the labelling's quite sort of...
I think it's like interesting. There is actually no research to prove that sugar is psychologically addictive. And I had seen that fact the other day, and as I was walking here today, I was thinking, that's right, I'm totally addicted to sugar psychologically. Have I convinced myself that my body needs it? I don't know. But I would say I do have a psychological addiction to sugar, even though the medics would say that's not possible. I believe that it is in my case. And I remember when we had a chat once about food being an elephant, and I was telling you that day that the day before I had been in Marks and Spencer's and I had got a Colin Caterpillar reduced to £1.5. And I honestly was like, oh my God, this is the best day. This is like the best day of the pandemic, because it was during the pandemic. I've actually got a whole Colin Caterpillar that needs to be ate by tomorrow that cost me £1. Yeah. And so, like, how is that not addictive psychologically? Because that was like, everything was going off in my head. Giving it to my wains, saying to my wains, I got a Colin Caterpillar for £5. Ultimately, most of the Colin Caterpillar went in the bin because I couldn't eat the whole thing. And my wains weren't quite as psychologically addicted as me, thank goodness.
Sure.
But do you know what is that thing about psychologically needing sugar?
Well, and is it the thing that's I don't know, is it the thing that's just out of reach, that kind of feeling of, you know, like it's got that, you know, naughty as well, naughty but nice, is that, you know, it's almost the strapline for anything that's sugary, you know, and it's like, oh God, if there's kind of lust and denial involved at all.
I think it's like, you think about what we use sugar for. So you have a wedding, you have a wedding cake, you get a christening cake. Everything that we celebrate is celebrated with sugar.
Totally, yeah.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
When did you ever go to a celebration that didn't have a cake at it? If you not got a cake, if you actually turned up to a celebration that didn't have a cake at it. And then I'd be like that if that was like Molly's experience and that's Mulder's daughter and our wee West End life, going to parties and they didn't give a cake. I'd be like, sort of a mod doesn't have a cake. I would be like, then judging the woman for not having a birthday cake. I remember Molly went to a door at my sister's in Strathbungo on Halloween and somebody gave her a flower. Can you imagine devastation on my way? And she was like, we're never coming back here for Halloween again, Mum.
It's true when we were kids that if you had an aunt or an uncle, that was their way of having a relationship with you. Was I had an Auntie Vera who turned up.
My knee will give you a sweetie.
It's very much. My Auntie Vera made the mistake of taking me, the most deprived Wayne in the street, and at the Drake Cafe in Castlemilk, and saying, you can have what you want. And I remember thinking these wild thoughts. I remember thinking, I've never tasted white chocolate. What is an Oddfellow? What the fuck is an Oddfellow?
What does it taste like? Pick that, because they're rubbish.
No, but then I thought, Anne, she said anything, and I kept looking at her and saying anything, and she said anything. There was a big box with a Labrador puppy and a bow in the corner, and I was thinking, she said anything, which means I could be at home in my bedroom with that box of chocolates and eating them all. And of course, I knew my mammy would absolutely batter me. So I ended up picking Old English Spangles because I really loved the one that tasted a wee bit like Werther's Originals. And and I remember her saying, is that it? Is that it? Because I didn't have the guts to ask for any more than Old English Spangles. But that was a huge memory for me, that I could have had something at the Drake Cafe that I'd never, you know, just literally ecstatic about the idea of sugar, ecstatic about it when I was wee, because it was never around, you know.
So the elephant then needs to be, we're having this very glamorised conversation about our childhoods and how it's been entered, but the elephant is, if we can admit that we've got a addiction to it, how many people right now are sneaking about to get a sugar fix? How many people don't even know how compulsive they became to sugar because it's been put into everything that we're eating? You know, you were talking about being psychologically addicted. Saturday night was the last meal I had, and I've just been drinking water and drinking green juice. Sunday was absolutely horrendous. I felt as if my head was in a vice. And day 1 and day 4, I'm on day 5 now, and I feel as if I'm coming through the curb, but like depressed and no energy, and goodness me, it's been absolutely horrendous. And I know fully I've been sober for drugs and alcohol for, goodness, 15 years, and my last addiction that I need to break is alcohol. You would go to, for those of you that are listening, old school Alcoholics Anonymous, you used to go there with a drink problem. The past master would give you a Mars bar or something like that and say, you got a pan for a drink, son, just have the Mars bar. You look at the amount of sugar that's in alcohol, the amount of sugar that's in a bottle of wine or a pint of lager, and as we're talking about, it's absolutely everywhere. But then we're the one that's eating it and then expecting somebody else to look and care for us and take care of our physical health that's had a detrimental impact because of the amount of abuse that we've gave our body.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to read the labels.
It is, and I think we give our responsibility away too often with everything.
Absolutely.
We're always giving our power away, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And it's like, well, if they give me it in school, if they give me it in the hospital, you know, if they give me it here, then it must be okay. And we've almost like removed ourselves from authority in our own lives. And I mean, God, we do that in so many areas, but I think we definitely do it with our food, don't we?
And it's like, try not to be too depressing about it, but I very rarely do it. But if I go to a massive big Tesco's or something like that, see if I get to the end of an aisle and I've not put anything in my trolley, I'm like, yes! You know, they've not got me, it's a victory. You know, you have to kind of literally defend against all the advertising and all the pushing and all the...
It's so
and there's
hard,
so
though.
little food on the shelves. There's so little actual food. You know, I'd like to go to primary schools and go, right, okay, so that's great, you're getting to learn to read and write. So let's do a wee bit of cooking. Let's do a wee bit of what is food and what's no food. Let's do a wee bit of, you know, I mean, there's so many things I'd like to teach at primary level, you know, everything from self-defence to first aid to
giving them effective folk economics.
You know, I remember the day I found out that caramel cake was something you could actually make at home by buying a tin of condensed milk and boiling it in a pan, and I was over the moon. I could have my own caramel cake. Oh my God, if I get digestive biscuits and a tin of condensed milk, and I didn't need to hope the dinner lady said there's extra portions available. You know, so it's like, you know, I'm a big fan of this woman Susan Peirce Thompson. She's very American and very evangelistic, and sometimes as Scots I think are put off by that, but she talks about bright line eating. She would basically say what you're doing, Ross, is unless that's out of your system, unless these very high kicky foods that, you know, spike your insulin are actually gone from your system, you don't understand what appetite actually is. And I totally understand that. You know, like that feeling of, you know, that feeling when you've had your dinner and you've maybe decided to go and watch something on Netflix and you get a want on you, and it's a kind of, it's kind of angsty, and it's a kind of, I could just a wee something. I just a wee,
get me a wee something.
I don't know what, but a wee, no, maybe it's an oat cake, maybe, wait a minute, is there any of that? Where's that old biscuit tin? Any of them, like, you know, that kind of want that's on you, and it's anxious ridden, it's anxious making, it's not appetite. Remember my sister saying, oh God, she comes with 6 cakes, I eat one, she eats 5. I've never known anyone with an appetite like it. And I go, nobody's got an appetite for 5 cakes. That's no appetite, that's addiction, you know.
I get that I am a psychological eater. I would eat if I was sad. I would eat to make myself feel better in that case. I would eat if I was stressed. I would eat to celebrate. And a lot of that, if I think about it, even now, it's like, I'm a bit fed up with, what do you want for your dinner? I don't really care, but is there a cake for after my dinner?
Totally.
Do you know that way? Yes, so that sugar, just as we're chatting about it, I'm thinking my sugar addiction is actually getting really bad. And you being, I'm not going to go off food because I just wouldn't be able to function with that. I'm not doing that, Ross, I'm not copying you there. But if I'm really being really honest, if I was to decide just now, right, I'm going to cut sugar out my diary for 24 hours, out my day for 24 hours, I don't even think I could do it.
You know, it's funny talking to you.
That's quite shocking, isn't it?
No, it's not, Anne. It's actually not. I don't think it's shocking at all. I want to put up in neon lights, it's not your fault. It's what's been done to us. And you're right about delegating your power away, but how we actually achieve a position of any strength around this is not through willpower, not through discipline. I mean, Ross, you need to back me up here because you're brilliant on this stuff. There's no way that you could just screw, your head to it. Basically, while this stuff's coursing through your systems, no way. What might happen, and that's why I love the bright line thinking, and I've been reading and talking about this for years and not been able to do it. I did it for 2 weeks once, unlike your man here. But if the high kicky foods, and it's all white flours, it's flour as well as sugar, as well as cocaine would be in there as well, but any highly processed refined foods hit your bloodstream in an unnatural way, and what happens basically is you get peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs, and none of it's to do with normal appetite. It's to do with just basically feeling depleted, feeling hungry. The nutrients are not there in the food that's on the shelves in the supermarkets.
So we're starving.
You actually are starving.
You're starving.
It's not that you're
100%
greedy.
agreed.
My pals would go, oh, but Libby, you eat too much, your portions are too big. And I'll go, I know. And like you, Anne, it's emotional eating. The moment I feel overweight, I want to treat myself with a wee solace from, and a kind of, something to eat. But once the stuff's out your system, what happens is you go, oh my God, it's been 4 hours since I've eaten and I've not even thought about food. This is mental. It's like your ordinary, clean, happy leanings towards good food come back. Like magic.
I think it'll get like cigarettes, the way cigarettes used to be glamorous. And it was advertised everywhere, and having a fag was a very glamorous, sexy woman standing there in her lovely gown and her lovely cigarette. And now you can't even advertise cigarettes, and even the packets got pictures. The packets on cigarettes are disgusting now with the pictures.
I know.
Whereas we're still advertising sugar all over the shop.
We're still in Willy Wonka, aren't we?
And I'm thinking about Ferrero Rocher, which is a wee favourite of mine. And the ambassador likes Ferrero Rocher. And it's like this. So it's very glamorised, isn't it?
It was all to do with refinement, all to do with...
Think of the flake woman.
White.
The sexy flake woman.
Totally.
The sexy wrappers, the colours. What really grates on me is I drive up, and I know school holidays are on, but I drive up from where I go for a swim in the morning, and I see the kids going into school, and I see kids like, first year, second year, and they've got cans of energy drink that's about the same size as them.
Aye.
Right? It's like literally...
The energy drinks are horrendous.
They've got energy drinks, right, which is quite literally, there must be about a litre in it. It's huge. And they're eating packets of crisps, and they're eating bags of sweeties, and they're walking to school at 8 o'clock in the morning. And the most sophisticated part of our framework, if you like, is the microgenome, the microbes in our gut. We've got microbes in our gut. Every single one of us have got about a kilo of these microbes in our stomach, and they're primitive. They're primordial, actually. They're ancient bacteria. We have got no idea we need those bacteria to be functioning healthy and well to support our immune system. And get this, if you had a Ferrari, you wouldn't take it to a backstreet garage for its service. Ferrari wouldn't uphold the warranty if you did. Yet we think it's acceptable to pour a litre of some kind of energy drink into this billions of year old microbes that's in our gut and not have any effect on them.
And then you think of the wider impact that's having, like using that example. I mean, these energy drinks are banned in some European countries. So you've got a kid walking to school having that in the morning. By the time they get into a place of learning, they're actually bouncing off the walls. Are they going to effectively learn that?
Totally.
No, they get taken down and then get a diagnosis of ADHD.
Exactly.
Nobody sits down and goes, did you have a litre of Monster Energy drink this morning?
Exactly. And so then that impact, and then that way
let's give you Ritalin.
You become, I would imagine, as you're coming down off anything, I don't drink energy drinks, but as you're coming down off anything, you get that sort of a dip, that wee bit of depression, that bit
moody,
of that bit of paranoia. And then it's like, so then they're looking on Instagram and they're seeing their pal who's a bit skinnier and a bit prettier and a bit living a better life. And so then they're becoming paranoid about that. And actually,
it's very hard.
These sugary energy caffeine drinks, what is kickstarting the plague of anxiety that we've got among our young people just now.
Of course. There is a technical term for that, but it's like how sugar hijacks the reward system through the mesolimbic system in the brain, which is exactly the same as drugs. So like the mesolimbic system is less important, but it's like mostly the carrier, it's the highway. So if you imagine like the mesolimbic system in the brain is like the M8, the M8 is what connects Glasgow and Edinburgh, that's the main highway. So anything that's going to go into the reward system that then goes down into the dopamine system, the dopaminergic reaction that we have to it, sugar works in exactly the same part of the brain as cocaine, nucleus accumbens.
Yep.
And under functional magnetic resonance, you can actually look at a brain on cocaine and a brain on sugar, and guess what? It's identical. It's exactly the same. So we're then looking at symptoms of behaviour, right? And you could get into an argument, and I actually have gotten into an argument with this, but then people would say, but what if the families were disadvantaged or impoverished backgrounds? And I scratched my head and went, what, gain them a can of Monster Energy drink and a bar of Cadbury's dairy milk to go to school with means it comes from a disadvantaged background? Sorry.
See, if they were taking cocaine in their way to school, would that change the subject?
You know, and it's like, and I like what you're saying, is it going to come to what really, really grates me is we're talking about these things, and, you know, there's no a better form of sugar than another, but we're speaking about these E numbers, which has still got sugar in it, but these jelly sweets, Haribos and sweets and all that kids just absolutely love. And it's sending Wayne's completely and utterly bouncing off the walls. And as we're saying, it's like, I want to reflect on what you said, Libby, which is really, really important. What we set up is a system of, if you're a good boy, you'll get a treat. Then you get the treat sends you off your head, and then you get hammered. You get leathered. Yeah. You get leathered for being hyper.
Yeah, for being grumpy and
moody.
But
wait a minute. If I'm a good boy, I'll get a treat. And then I've took this treat and I'm all happy that I've got a treat because I feel great that I've been a good boy. 20 minutes later, I'm as high as a kite and I get pulled up the close and get
I've done it to my own niece, kind of going, oh, what you like, you know, and then realised her dad's just giving her a big packet. Here's too much information, right? But it reminds me of a story I had once. I met this girl and she came from a croft in the islands up north, the way up, and she came to Glasgow. She'd followed a boy and then she came to Glasgow and she'd never had shop-bought sweeties. She just never had. She said to me she'd gone to school and her play piece was a bit of turn-up. But she'd been in Glasgow and she was pals. And anyway, she took this in, she said about sugar and flour and how she'd been eating a lot of cakes and a lot of, you know, she got totally addicted to sugar, totally addicted to Greggs, and that's where she ate her lunch, dinner and tea. And she said to me, my body's changed. And this is the too much information bit, right? But what she told me was that she realised that every part of her that was trying to flush out these toxins from her system was doing its utmost to do so. So now, as an adult woman, she had, and had never had before when she was up in the croft in the islands, waxy ears, runny eyes, a drippy nose, sweaty armpits and a heavy period.
Goodness.
And it was almost like
so true.
Any flow that could happen in her system was trying to wash out. You know, she said, I never had heavy periods. I never had waxy ears. I never had sweat, you know, a sweaty body. I never had heavy periods. These were all things that have happened since I started eating sugar and flour. You know,
it's horrendous. It's horrendous. As I said to you, this is me on day 5. Day 4, which would have been Wednesday for me, the warmest room in my house is my lower bathroom. I think the radiator's too big for the size of it. And and I never realised how I was feeling until I went into the bathroom down the stairs, and then I felt the heat. The minute I felt the heat, I got a sense of how cold my body was inside. Yeah. I was chittering. I was actually chittering. And when I tuned into that, the inside of me was rattling. And this is a legal substance. I've come off illegal drugs that I haven't felt as bad. You know, and it's just, I would encourage anybody, if you don't think you've got a problem, I say that to anybody, if you don't think you've got a problem, well, stop it for 48 hours.
Aye.
I know I've got a problem. Anything, cigarettes, anything I've not got a problem with. I've not got a problem with drinking as well. Just cut it out. Just go without it.
That's why the bright line eating thing that is about weight loss as well says fluffy bunny slippers for at least the first week. You don't do anything.
Aye, right.
You lie about. You drink tons of water. And if you think you're going on the bright line eating plan to lose weight and then you're going to go to the gym and all that, forget it. You will be a wreck for 5 days tops. You know.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Train wreck.
And that's, you know. But guys, I mean, we're in Scotland. I mean, look what's happening in America.
You know, Gore Vidal said that you're going to get either a Pepsi-Cola president or a Coca-Cola president, you know, because sugar's funding so much stuff. So they're not going to... We really need to step up and take power here, because they're not going to stop giving us the sugar in the packets.
It's completely... It's like we give our power away in every situation, and where this sugar is just one of it. And it's like... One of the things that we were talking about as we were walking up here today was, I came across a bit of information that was unrelated to this, but I was looking about potassium and magnesium absorption from a banana, and how I could eat it and get absolutely nothing from the banana, as Anne could get 50% benefit, Libby could get 75% benefit. And that got me thinking. I mean, that's completely true. Every individual absorbs and experiences everything entirely differently. Yet we've got a can of Coca-Cola, or we've got our pre-packed meals, and we look in the back and there's a wee square with the lines down through it, and it says sugar, salt, 15 grams, 12 grams, all the rest of it. That's irrelevant information. It's there to cover legalities, but it's completely inaccurate, because I'm going to utilise the energy from that totally different from you, totally different from Anne.
Yeah, it's like know thyself is
and
actually...
It's like, oh, well, what is the recommended daily guidelines? I don't know, has anybody got that? The RDA of sugar, I think, is something around about, let's say for an argument, 20 grams, right? Whatever it is. There is a recommended daily allowance, which I think is far too much, personally. Your recommended daily allowance is done in one Mars bar.
Do you think the food manufacturers are in on it? Do you think they're like it's happened by accident? Like the way theoretically they didn't know when they started doing cigarettes that it had carcinogenics in it? Because theoretically they perhaps didn't. I believe they perhaps didn't, right?
I think there's loads of research.
Do you think they're all just like colluding in it now?
No.
Make more sugar, make it more addictive.
I think there's...
Make an unhealthier society.
Well, there's thousands of pounds spent on research how to just get that sweet spot right for people to come back for more.
It's scientists that are creating our food.
It's just all about capitalism. It's all about money.
Do you know how much the world consumes? I don't think we can quantify what this means, but I looked it up. The world consumption of sugar in 2020, 2021, so this was new figures, 171 million metric tonnes. We don't know what that means, but it sounds like an awful lot.
That's a lot. That's an awful lot. That
is the world
through.
consumption
and
of
then
sugar.
we look at why are our hospitals filled with diabetes, chronic heart disease, cancer.
So guys, we've
why
gone
are
for
these
this.
things on the
We've
rise?
gone for this refined, refinement. It's all
it's the
lovely.
devil in the room.
And it's this kind of, in America, the 60-minute programme, there was this kind of documentary series called 60 Minutes. There was one just called Sugar, and it's banned. You can't get it. I mean, you probably, if you knew what you were doing online, you could probably find it. But they just banned it. They just went, what? Take that away. And that, that's what Gore Vidal's saying. He's saying you get a Coca-Cola president or a Pepsi-Cola president because the big sugar moguls are just funding...
Running the world.
It's this...
And I bet you the folk at the sitting round the board tables don't have sugar. I bet you they're very healthy people that don't have sugar in their diets. Don't eat what they're producing.
This is the big joke.
Because they know.
Yeah. Don't get high in their own supply.
And let's face it, guys, if we go to any... big housing scheme that, I was brought up in anywhere in Glasgow, you are looking at what folk think is food in most people's cupboards. It's very hard for people to really understand that there's something wrong with the shelves, the supermarket shelves. We really need to start understanding what is food and what's not actually
because
food.
I think this is interesting when it comes to that the whole food poverty that we've got now. And you'll have people thinking when they get their money, however that comes to them, that they are doing a good thing by going to farm foods and buying meals to put in the fridge so they can feed their wains all week.
Of course.
And I think the link that we've lost is people no longer get taught how to make a pot of soup.
Absolutely.
How to make a bowl, a big, gigantic pan full of stew or something like that will last all week and would actually... And I know, and a really sad story, I suppose, is like somebody who said when a person was going through their debt in an organisation I was doing a bit of work with, and said to them, what do you spend your money on? The Wayne's like an omelette out the Chinese. Well, you could make an omelette for like 50 pence by buying eggs, and they didn't know an omelette was made from eggs. Oh. Right? So if that is the reality of how we are educating people about food, that we actually now have multiple So I did. My mammy and then my daddy and my sisters taught me how to cook. My daughters can cook full meals.
I still
often
cook for
my
an army.
dinner. Do you know that way? So my children have learned, and God thank God that I haven't been in that position. But if there's people that are now in second or third generation and nobody teaching them how to cook, and them doing the best they can do is buying something that they don't realise is full of sugar and feeding their child that, and their child not only is hyper after it, but is also hungry after an hour.
That's the point. So we're talking about, whether it's in a, a kind of, physiological thing or an emotional thing, or, basically if you're not giving your body the nutrient amount that it needs, and this is the big thing about, crispy pancakes is, it's not going to work because you're still going to feel hungry. You're starving. You're
literally starving.
And you could make a pot of soup for £2 that would last you for 2 days, your whole family.
Absolutely.
But then it's like, what bread are you dipping in the soup? The bread's full of shite. It's like, so it's like society has just messed with people, and we have just set them off on the wrong path. And it takes something bigger than me or yours making a personal choice about how much sugar we put into our body. Sure. It takes a societal shift.
Well, we need to make that.
And who does that? Because I don't know that we can start that, but as much as we'd want it.
You've been using the word addiction, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't agree with addiction. That's a whole other conversation. But the word addict in itself comes from the Latin addictus, which means that back in the olden days, someone that couldn't pay their debt, they would then be assigned to the debtor, and that would have been a form of slavery. So really, when we say sugar addict, what we're saying is we're enslaved. We're now having a conversation about how enslaved we are by the authority that's providing us these beautifully packaged, loved what Libby said, our meals, that, leek and cream chicken that you put in the oven for 20 minutes, it wasn't your granny that cooked that. That was scientists in a room that actually come up with the correct coding and sweet spot and a bit of that and a flavour of that. We've got scientists that are alchemists that are working with our food to get our dopamine system hijacked to such a level. We get into a different conversation. They're doing it in Facebook, they're doing it with gambling, they're doing it with roulette machines. They're hijacking our reward system at every turn. We're just a puppet.
Yeah.
So what's next then for us? As we start to come to the end of this, what's next for us with sugar?
I've got another 5 days. I've got another 5 days, and hopefully I'm through it.
Oh, no.
10 days and my body should be clear.
I mean, we're not advocating that we do what you're doing, Ross. You are a man of extremes.
Extreme.
But basically, the food is out there. Good food is out there. Let's just look at because all the beautiful sweetness of putting grapes in the freezer, instead of a boiled sweetie. There's loads of different
on that
ways
very topic. Let's bounce this in. Have you ever, on a Sunday, for an example, I've done this once, sat down and created, like as you said, a big bowl of soup, put it into 5 or 6 tubs, that went into the freezer, you created meals, and you knew what you were cooking, right? Versus not doing that.
Yeah.
What component is different? Because I was thinking about that myself, because I'm talking about my relationship with food. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this detox just now, so that I can set myself to a cleaner path moving forward. But see, when I don't know what I'm eating day to day, it causes me stress.
It causes me stress.
I've got, oh goodness, I've got to get something for my dinner. I've got to go and get something in. Whereas see, when I actually spend 2 hours on a Sunday and make a bowl of soup and some meals and some lunches for the week going forward, the week just goes a whole lot better.
And hunger is not a crisis. If you're feeling a wee bit like, oh God, I need something to eat, enjoy it. Just kind of go, I'm going to really enjoy this, But yeah, so basically, we're tying this all up now just to sort of say, let's do our research, even if it's Jamie Oliver, let's find out where the food lives and go and get it and start to experiment. I know when I cook, and as you know, I can cook, guys, but when I cook, I always love choices that are healthy. They taste brilliant, toasted seeds and nuts and, everything. Anyway, it's the way to eat, to realise what's happening with sugar.
It's taking a wee bit of personal responsibility for it, and not just shoving stuff down my gob, which I do far too often. And I'm not going to stop eating cakes, because I do love cakes, but maybe I won't love them quite as much if I sort out my sugar addiction.
Sure. We can find a way. Anyway, sugar. Who would have thought it could have been so dastardly?
Who would have thought?
Those wee squares.
Who knew?
Well, if it was dastardly enough for certain programmes to be banned in America, it tells us something, does it not? It makes us think.
Doesn't it just? All right, enjoy your food, everyone. Lots of love. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to our programme. You can find future episodes on Acast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. With thanks to Matt Ramsey for editing and mixing this episode. This podcast was produced by Solace Sounds.